And now it's time to hear Mr. Jeff Halper, Crimes Against Palestinian People, Indicting Zionist Settler Colonialism is subject that Mr. Jeff Halper will be speaking about.
I hate to read, but so I'm sure I stay within my 10 minutes. I'm going to do that. I apologize. My name is Jeff Halper. I'm the director of ICAD, an Israeli-based anti-colonial organization dedicated to resisting the Israeli demolition of Palestinian homes, the Zionist colonization of Palestine, and for establishing a shared democracy between the river and the sea. I'm here in my capacity as an expert on the crimes of house demolitions and settler colonialism. In the few minutes I have, I'll address specifically the need for the tribunal to look up from the specific areas of crime being committed by Israel in Gaza in order to hold accountable the very system, Zionist settler colonialism, that spawns those crimes. The crimes of which Israel is accused, from plausible genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity, to specific and myriad violations of the Fourth Geneva Convention and the International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid, among others, cannot be addressed only as crimes in and of themselves. For justice to be advanced and to ensure that these crimes never happen again, the political and ideological system from which they emerge must also be dismantled. This was recognized in a way when the UN General Assembly adopted the Zionism is Racism resolution in 1975. Although that wasn't an operational resolution, but merely declarative, and it was repealed, unfortunately, in 1991. The verdict regarding Israel's operations in Gaza must relate not only to specific criminal policies and actions, but also then to the criminal system that spawned them. Zionism's very purpose, to Judaize Palestine, by definition, violates the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination as guaranteed in the UN Charter. The principle that all peoples have an inalienable right to complete freedom, sovereignty, and territorial integrity has risen to a point of customary law. Settler colonialism, however, isn't a concept with a clear and adjudicable definition that can be applied in international law, like, for example, occupation or apartheid. This weakens the ability to apply international law to cases of settler colonialism. I would therefore like to shift the focus of the accusations from the crimes this tribunal is considering to the broader illegal colonial system of Zionism, which gives rise to them. Settler colonialism, in both its ancient and modern forms, is a form of colonization in which settlers arrive in another country with the intent of taking it over. It can arise out of nationalist ideology, as in the case of Zionism, or as a policy of grabbing and integrating territory, as in the Sinification of Tibet, the Iraqi attempt to Arabize Kurdistan, or the Russification of Eastern Europe. Whatever the steps taken by the settlers, they follow a similar pattern: displace or eliminate the indigenous population, take control of its lands, replace the native population with the settler one, a process which in Zionism is known as Judaization, and ultimately to normalize the new country In the case of Zionism, to normalize the transformation of Palestine into Israel, in the image of the settlers themselves. This process then disappears the indigenous population. Palestine and Palestinians are disappeared, and the settlers become the new indigenous population. Genocide, cultural and physical, is therefore built into the settler project. As the Zionist leader and former Prime Minister Moshe Sharett said as far back as 1914, "We have not come to an empty land to inherit it. We have come to conquer a country from a people inhabiting it that governs it by virtue of its language and savage culture." So the flip side of Judaization is de-Arabization. Already in 1937, David Ben-Gurion, who was a vocal proponent of compulsory and total transfer, established a committee on population transfer within the Jewish Agency. This is a decade before the partition, of Palestine by the UN. And the whole idea of transfer was given its best expression by Joseph Weitz, who was the director of the Jewish National Fund's Land Settlement Department before '48. And he was the driving force behind the expulsions of 1948 when he declared, "It must be clear that there is no room in the country for both peoples. The only solution is a land of Israel without Arabs. There is no way but to transfer the Arabs from here to the neighboring countries, to transfer all of them, perhaps with the exception of Bethlehem, Nazareth, and Old Jerusalem. Not one village must be left, not one tribe," in the words of Joseph Weitz. Now, the initial transfer actually took place during the course of the Nakba, of course. In 1948, when Israel expelled about 750,000 Palestinians, more than half the population, the Palestinian population, and 85% of the Palestinians that were inhabiting what became the State of Israel. The transfer repeated itself in 1967, when between 280,000 and 325,000 Palestinians were driven from the West Bank, Gaza, and the Golan Heights, as Israeli military violence was directed at the civilian population, including the demolition of population centers and the emptying of refugee camps by the Israeli army. And today, in the wake of its genocidal operations in Gaza, again, genocide and ethnic cleansing being part of the process of Judaization, Israel is openly negotiating with a number of countries, including South Sudan, Ethiopia, Libya, and Indonesia, to accept all or most of Gaza's 2.3 million people. This is an active campaign on the part of Israel today. This isn't just some idea in the air. In collaboration with the Trump administration, Israel's presented detailed plans for the redevelopment of Gaza, virtually devoid of its current inhabitants. The seizure of Palestinian lands is easily documented in maps. Since 1947, Israel has been awarded 56% of Palestine by the UN partition plan. It's conquered another 22% of Palestine in 1948. The Green Line that accepts internationally those conquests and the partition is now codified into what we call the Green Line, which has become de facto the border of Israel. And it's established full military control over the entire occupied territory. It's also annexed de facto Area C of the West Bank, the 62% of the West Bank, that today houses 800,000 settlers in more than 300 illegal settlements. 90% of the 6.7 million Palestinian residents of historic Palestine between the river and the sea are today confined by Israeli military and planning policies to 12% of their homeland. That 12% is comprised of some 170 disconnected enclaves. The loss of their country, their lands, and attempts to erase their culture and their very presence from Palestine compels the Palestinians to resist. And since resistance is therefore built into settler colonialism, Zionism cannot achieve its goals, normalizing its violent Judaization of Palestine, without pacification, without breaking all Palestinian resistance. That is the political background and the purpose behind the assault on Gaza. Pacification. Eliminating all resistance among an entire population must by necessity then shade into genocide. The principle of distinction between combatants and non-combatants, fundamental to the rules of warfare, can't be obeyed if the entire colonized population is engaged in resistance. Even non-violent resistance, like building homes on one's own land without a permit. But because the native population must be displaced and pacified for the settler project to succeed, Israel can't refrain from committing war crimes and crimes against humanity. All this compels the tribunal, in my view, to hold the very system of Zionist settler colonialism accountable, in the understanding that the system is illegal in international law by its very nature and purpose, and the fact that it is the source of the crimes the tribunal is investigating. I appeal to the members of the jury to do so. In addition, as the head of ICAD, I call on the members of the jury to address the issue that while democide, herbicide, and scholasticide are all aspects of cultural genocide itself is excluded from the Genocide Convention, which only recognizes physical genocide. Since the Nakba, Israel's demolished almost 500,000 Palestinian homes, schools, universities, libraries, museums, mosques, churches, commercial centers, markets, and farm buildings. We urge the international community to expand the Genocide Convention so that it includes all these crimes as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Amazing. We have actually 3 members of the jury have raised their hands in this situation. So what I'm going to suggest is that if you each ask the question, there are 3 of them, and perhaps that they overlap, and Jeff, you could answer them. So can I take them all together? So let's start with Biliana, who had her hand up first, then Chandra, then Ada. Keep them short if you can.
I'll try to keep it short, even though we are talking about the root causes and about the root causes of the situation of the genocide. But, and we started from the 19th century and all this prehistory. But the root causes are mutating. They are developing along with the changing world. And if we talk about the settler colonialism as a form of imperialism, today we talk about hyper-imperialism. So it is a global phenomenon. You suggested that we should focus on dismantling the criminal system of Israel. For me, it is too narrow, too local, not enough. because we have to talk about the political economy of genocide, where complicit actors are private military companies, other states, other international organizations. How are we going to deal with all these actors? It is not only Israel. It would be very easy to point out Israel is the bad guy, let's dismantle the system, let's try to build something better. Sorry, I know it is a long and complex question.
Thank you, Chandra. Have you got a pen there, Jeff?
No.
To record that.
Okay.
Thank you, moderator. The root cause in sustaining genocide and apartheid in Israel is perhaps linked to something very, very current and contemporary. And what is that? It is the link, the very intimate, intricate link between Zionism, the state of Israel, and global hegemony. The whole system is what sustains Israel. Don't forget that when Israel was established, there were statements made by American leaders and others who had openly admitted that if there wasn't Israel, they would have created an Israel. Why? Because of the strategic importance of that part of the world, the only part of the world where three continents meet, the great waterways, and at that point, the beginning of the discovery of oil and gas in that region. They needed a state that would play a particular role. And they'd already begun to see, at the end of the 19th century, the rise of nationalism in various parts of the Arab world. They wanted a partner, tool, an agent that was much more reliable. And they created Israel for that reason. So the link with global hegemony is extremely important. And I cannot see Israel becoming a normal state. I cannot see genocide ending and all the other dimensions of this terrible conflict coming to an end without global hegemony coming to an end. That, to my mind, is the root cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Chandra. And Radha. That's on.
Okay. This is just a question about Zionism and genocide. I'd like you to just clarify. Is genocide an inherent part of Zionism, or is it the case that Zionism, as you've explained, aimed to get rid of the population, not necessarily by killing them? If they had just got up and left Palestine, my understanding is this would not, the attempt would not have been made to kill them wherever they were. But the whole point, isn't it? It's just wanted to clarify that, if you wouldn't mind, as to what the essence of Zionism, while it might use genocide if it has to, in essence, it's aiming to expel the people.
Thank you, Radha. Jeff,
Can I squeeze in just quick 30 seconds, if I may?
You've had a question, Sami. Can we've got online participants who are coming, so I think we can do something with the rapporteurs later. Sorry. Jeff, please come back.
All right. Well, in terms of the first comments, if I got it right, you know, settler colonialism is a system, and it's not unique to Zionism, of course. I mean, the settler colonial projects all over. I mentioned Iraq and Kurdistan. Well, there's the issue of Western Kurdistan as well. The United States, you know, Canada. I mean, you go all over the world. The French in Algeria. I mean, it's a system, and I guess what I was just trying to point out here and argue was that, you know, if you don't attack the system itself, you can attack its different symptoms, but you've got to, you know, you have to attack the causes of those crimes. And in fact, if you look at the settler colonial projects in different parts of the world, they follow a fairly similar pattern, as I tried to mention, so that even the crimes become kind of common and parallel. And so if you attack the settler colonial system, and I argue that the international legal system has tools for that, you're not only able to deal with all the instances of the crimes committed, but you're able to prevent the crimes. I mean, it was completely predictable. I think it was predictable to the UN in 1947 when they did the partition plan, that genocide was going to happen, that the Nakba was going to happen. I mean, it was all clear, not only from the statements of Ben-Gurion and these people, but from the very nature of what Israel was doing and what previous settler colonial enterprises did as well. So I think it's a lacuna. We use settler colonialism as kind of an analytical tool, which is really important, but I do think it has to somehow, I'm not an international lawyer, so I don't know how to do that, it has to be brought into the legal processes so that we can begin to attack the root causes and not simply the symptoms. In terms of global hegemony, I write a lot about that. I wrote a book called War Against the People. And it was subtitled Israel, the Palestinians, and Global Pacification. I talked about the pacification of Gaza, but Israel, in a sense, on the basis of what I call the Palestinian laboratory, you know, its 130-year war against the Palestinian people has developed tactics of population control, technologies of repression, surveillance, and weapons, you know, for wars against the people that countries don't have. You know, the Pentagon might have $1 trillion budget a year, but it didn't prevail in Iraq or Afghanistan. Wars against the people that especially arise out of the capitalist system we have are really Israel's niche. It's its specialty. Enforcing capitalism at a time when, with neoliberalism, of course, more and more people, including the middle-class young people of the global north, are being excluded from the global economy, from the job market, and so on. So that it serves that purpose, and it also serves to give support to repressive regimes. Let's not forget the Pegasus system in Khashoggi's telephone that Israel had supplied to Saudi Arabia. So, you know, this whole issue of Israel serving the hegemons, that was an essential principle of Zionism since Herzl went to the Sultan here in Istanbul to try to get a charter for Palestine. And when that didn't happen, he went to the German Kaiser, met him in Jerusalem to try to get a charter. Serving the hegemons has always been Zionism's strategy, because otherwise it's a small little movement of a few Jews somewhere. It doesn't make any sense. But if you can insert yourself into the global system, and Israel's very good at reading the needs of the different countries whose support it needs, then it's able to succeed. And in fact, I think there's a co-hegemony developing in the Middle East between Israel, which is becoming the military hegemon of the region to a large degree, certainly of the Arab part of the Middle East, and Saudi Arabia, which is becoming the economic hegemon. And, you know, so those kinds of considerations, it's true, really, you know, give even a wider context to how Israel succeeds in its settler colonial project. And finally, just really quickly, I think you know, genocide, that's what I was trying to argue in this presentation. The genocide isn't only physical genocide. It has to do, you know, when Raphael Lemkin developed the concept of genocide, He got the United Nations to accept the physical genocide part, but not the cultural genocide part. But cultural genocide also prevents peoples from reproducing themselves. If they don't have land, if they're expelled, if they're scattered, if they're oppressed, they can't, if they're diseased, they can't reproduce themselves. So that part of genocide should be brought, that should be a campaign of ours to expand the Geneva Convention, so that genocide can mean killing a population, which Israel has done, and also expelling them, which Israel has done in mass, and also marginalizing them, which is what Israel is doing in terms of, like I said, confining the Palestinians to 12% of their country today. And I'll end on this, that Israel really has given the Palestinians, this is reflected in this, a very stark option of three things. Israel has said to the Palestinians, you submit to us. If you recognize this country as a Jewish country from the river to the sea, and you submit, and you know your place, and you shut up, and you stop resisting, of course, we'll let you stay. So in a sense, submission is also kind of a part of this genocidal, or get out. Israel says to the Palestinians, you're living in a prison. You're in a prison, but the back door is open. Go out, however you want to go out, go settle somewhere else, or die. And I think that's the message of Gaza especially. Submit, leave, or die. And those are the, I think, different aspects of genocide, and we shouldn't reduce genocide only to the physical wholesale killing of a people.
Thank you very much, Jeff.